All right. I'm now joined by philosophy professor Ryan Lake, historian Daniel Bessner, Jacobin deputy editor Micah Uetricht, and GTAA producer, resident film buff Forrest Miller. Forrest, I just want to start out with a question for you. Do you podcast?
Yeah, I podcast.
How many times a week?
3-4 times a week.
Oh man, those are rookie numbers. You got what's up? That's come on. It'd be amazing if we just did like 5 minutes of that. Yeah. So we all watched The Wolf of Wall Street, and this seems like it would be a very timely movie to talk about right now. In fact, if you've got this, Forrest, the actual Jordan Belfort, who I have to say is not nearly as charismatic as the version of him in the movie, but he has, he's got a sense of humor about this, and he put together this video.
Here, the real Wolf of Wall Street. This is to all you Wall Street bettors, Robin Hooders, day traders. It's a message of love, respect, support. Most importantly, because you all need to hear this. What is Wall Street? The years I've been telling you guys to never take no for an answer, right? To never stop trading, to hold the line, to keep squeezing the fucking testicles of those dastardly short sellers until you get what you want. Because you all deserve it. To never stop squeezing them by the balls until they're forced to either buy or die. And now, this shit that Robinhood is pulling on us now, stopping us from trading, barring us from their platform, our home, the home that we built. What the fuck is that, Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's Wall Street. It's the hedge funds. It's fucking Robinhood being fucking hypocrites. That's what it is. It's them trying to squash us, the little guy, to put us all back in our places instead of the other way around like we've been doing to them. So, you know what, Wall Street? You know what, Robinhood? We're not leaving. We're not leaving. We're not fucking leaving! The show goes on! This is our home! They're gonna need a fucking wrecking ball to take us out of here! They're gonna have to send in the National Guard and fucking SWAT team because we ain't going nowhere! Fuck them!
There you go.
I mean, the shamelessness in promoting himself as the underdog, as the little guy is you gotta respect it. You gotta respect the hustle there.
That he's still doing it. He's still doing it. Yeah, it's amazing.
Is he a consultant? He's a consultant now. Is that his job?
Last I saw, he was some sort of motivational speaker.
Yeah, I think he's a financial motivational speaker. He's one of those guys that gives lectures on financial independence.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I think he's still legally barred from even giving specific stock advice.
Thank God.
Yeah.
he's barred from running a hedge fund. I don't think he's actually barred from anything else.
Oh.
He gave a bunch of interviews on the whole GameStop thing, and throughout them he's saying like he's allowed to trade He's allowed to make private trades. He's allowed to invest in companies. He's just specifically not allowed to run a hedge fund. Like even there.
Yeah, I read he can't act as here. He can't act as a broker or as an investment advisor.
Yeah. All right.
So.
Well, then I guess there's a loophole going on TV to give financial advice.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that video crosses the line. Like,
well, like this whole thing is anytime anything happens on Wall Street, they like bring him into either CNN or like MSNBC or Fox, like as a person to talk about Wall Street from like the inside.
So he is regularly on CNN and MSNBC.
Yeah,
that's fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
That is a sign of a sick society. Those people should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah.
That's truly disgusting.
Yeah.
If any of you are listening to this, you should be ashamed of yourself. Jesus Christ. That's really horrible.
Well, it would be a little bit like
lives.
I mean, like
lying.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a little bit like if one of the, I remember you saying that the Dr. Strangelove wasn't actually based primarily on Henry Kissinger or somebody else. So it'd be a little bit of like whoever that guy was on TV all the time to talk about foreign policy stuff, specifically because he had a character in a movie based on him.
Yeah, or it's like no one fails in this society. Elliot Abrams, Jordan Belfort, Oliver North.
Oh yeah,
I just released that Call of Duty piece. He was a character in one of the Call of Duties and was a paid consultant. Probably got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to attach his name to one of these video games. It's really a sick society.
Yeah, I think he might have even been accredited. Like, I think Oliver North might have even been a credited co-writer on an episode of The Americans. So, yeah, no, that's
Christ. These people should be exiled. We should have exile like they did in Rome. You know, they can't enter the city for 5 years. Or whatever.
At least not on television. Jesus.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, it's a society based on, I mean, we have a society based on like expertise, and we trust expertise, even if it's somebody who's been criminally charged with, giving false expertise. Like we still trust them as somebody that has some kind of weird like insider information.
Do we trust expertise? I'm not sure about that.
But I think that's it though, right? It's the credential itself, like and it doesn't even really make sense on its own terms. It's like when people said in 2016 that Hillary Clinton, was the most qualified, presidential candidate of all time, which again, even on its own terms, is probably not exactly true. George W. Bush was George H.W. Bush was the former vice president and head of the CIA. Yeah. But like also the much more weird thing about it was that, okay, so the time that she spent in the Senate as like one of the biggest backers of the Iraq War, the Democratic Party is like credited towards that qualification. It doesn't matter whether you made good decisions or, helped to make the world more or less safe or, brought about catastrophic human consequences. All that matters is that you were really important.
Mm-hmm. By the way, do you guys remember the Bernie quote from 2016 where he's talking to a reporter and they're asking him about Hillary Clinton's foreign policy expertise, and he says, well, I mean, there's, yes, she has a lot of expertise. You know who else had a lot of expertise? George W. Bush. And what did he do? He invaded Iraq. He used his expertise to invade Iraq. So I'm not sure that's a really a good, like, there's a little more to the conversation than whether or not somebody has expertise.
Yeah.
It's so wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, I believe that Jordan Belfort knows a lot about how the stock market works. He's still a very odd choice to bring on.
Well, I mean, a big part of it though is that you're not really allowed into this, into their world in a lot of capacities. You know what I mean? Like the only people that you can really get to talk to you about it are obviously people doing propaganda for Wall Street. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's an interesting choice in that way. But at the same time, the big thing that he likes to point out in all this stuff, whether it's in Wolf of Wall Street, which is a book that he wrote originally, which is what the movie's pretty closely based on. Like whether or not it's that, like he's claiming, everybody else on Wall Street was doing all of these same scams and all of these same crimes that I was, but then he got caught. Like, you know what I mean? So he's kind of the least qualified to talk about this stuff.
He's famous for getting caught.
Yeah.
I want to hear from somebody
I prefer Wall Street brokers who weren't caught.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's,
Ben, I will not be reading the book. I have to tell you, if you're gonna try to do another Goodfellas, this one I'm not reading. I'm sorry.
There's like a 4-hour audiobook. I couldn't get very far through it, but it's read by like Bobby Cannavale, so it was like,
oh really?
Yeah.
So funny. That guy is always really interested in like seeming like a tough guy. It's very funny. Like that's his like shtick. I wonder where he's from. I bet you he's from. Let's see, Bobby Cannavale. He's married to Rose Byrne now, I think. He's from Jersey. Yeah.
okay.
He's very coiffed. He's like a very well manicured fake tough guy.
Yeah, handsome. He's a handsome guy. Yeah.
So Micah, that's where you draw the line. You'll read former gangsters, but not former Wall Street con artists.
Well, I like the gangster a lot more than I like the fucking Wall Street guy. My God.
Well, I mean, and honestly, even in terms of the fictional portrayals, having watched 3 movies for this, different combinations of people, for this, that were like very, very similar, or really 4, 300 people, right? Very similar kinds of Martin Scorsese movies.
Mm-hmm.
They were all about scumbags, but Jordan Belfort was by far the least sympathetically portrayed scumbag of the 4.
Yeah.
And DiCaprio is like born for the role. This is like the zenith of his career. I feel like I feel like we're getting just a raw view of Leo himself in this movie. Which, by the way, in Eileen Jones's review of this movie for Jacobin from 2014, I learned that Leo has done videos for Jordan Belfort. Just if I could read from her quote of this video. Hello, I'm Leonardo DiCaprio. Some of you may know that I'll be playing Jordan Belfort in the new film Wolf of Wall Street. What separates Jordan's story from others like it is the brutal honesty with which he talks about the mistakes that he's made in his life. I've been in his company many times, but there is nothing quite like Jordan's public speaking and his ability to train and empower young entrepreneurs. Jordan stands as a shining example of the transformative qualities of ambition and hard work. And in that regard, he is a true motivator.
Yeah, this is what Leo said.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess when you're an actor, though, you got to kind of convince yourself of that. So I'll forgive him because you got to convince.
Fair enough, but there's also something interesting here, because I really can't imagine Ray Liotta saying that about Henry Hill.
That's true. That's true.
Or Robert De Niro saying that about the guy that Ace Rothstein was based on, Rosenthal, whatever his name was.
For as far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a motivational speaker.
Which I'm not even saying that as a slam against DiCaprio, but I mean maybe as a slam against our society. But
no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Leo is probably very politically sophisticated in terms of his thinking. Maybe he is. I don't know, but it's just interesting that he would choose to like say that. Publicly.
I mean, it sounds like Jordan Belfort wrote that for him. Like, it's
but he would read that. I mean, I think does say something about how Belfort, people like Belfort are seeing. That he wouldn't worry. It's like, should I read that? Is this going to come back on me?
Yeah.
I mean, even throughout the movie, Belfort kind of rebrands himself as some kind of motivational speaker, or like towards the end of the movie, right before he gets arrested, he's when they grab him onto the when the FBI grabs him, he's getting out of his helicopter, making that ad for his classes to teach people how to become financially independent. So it's kind of a grift that he's playing with for quite a long time throughout the movie. And the fact that he's still doing it in exactly the same way, pretty much. To the point where they even have the actual Jordan Belfort introduce him at the end of the movie. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I didn't.
At the end of the movie, the last scene when he's being introduced and there's the guy
that was him. Yeah,
pump him out. That's the actual Jordan Belfort that comes out and he goes, he's like, somebody you may know, like he's pumping up the crowd. That's him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because and that's the end of the movie. Like that's the equivalent of Henry Hill not being able to get good Italian food and witness protection. That he's been reduced to going to Australia to give these like kind of generic business advice seminars.
Yeah. but I mean, CNN grabs him now, like, you know what I mean? Like CNBC grab, like all of these places treat him as like a financial expert. So like, it's not, he's still in the same realm that he was, you know what I mean? Like it's like, like Henry Hill being in witness protection and eating the tomato paste as, tomato sauce or whatever. Like it's not like what Jordan Belfort does now is something that for him, at least mentally, comes with prestige. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, right. So I guess in that way, it's more like the real Henry Hill than than what was indicated at the end of Goodfellas. But before we get too far into the movie itself, I think obviously we watched the GameStop thing, and there are various interviews that Belfort did about GameStop, and I think it's interesting, like both obviously what it says about him and his gimmick for presenting himself, that that he's identifying with underdogs and presenting himself as the underdog, but it's also interesting, like just for what GameStop was as a cultural moment, that was the overwhelming narrative about it. That was the overwhelming feeling that it was. I haven't actually read it yet, so it could be a great article that has a sort of counterintuitive framing. But I saw an article saying that it was like GameStop was like Occupy Wall Street, and so which is interesting in itself, because I think that there are two, I think there are probably two things that are true about the GameStop thing, or definitely right, that that on the one hand, it really did show the emptiness and hypocrisy of a lot of the ways that that people talk about the free market and all of that stuff, that who's allowed to act this way and who isn't allowed to act that way, that for sure speaks volumes. But also the idea that this is some sort of big populist victory over Wall Street is deeply strange when you think about it for 10 seconds.
Well, these guys are all MBAs. I mean, it's not like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like they're day traders, but they're not uninformed day traders in the sense of random people that have no connection to the business community doing this. It's kind of like the Capitol, when people stormed the Capitol and we were having that conversation, as it was happening about small business owners, you know what I mean? It's like the petty bourgeois. It's not like it's poor people or you know what I mean? Middle class, lower middle class people, I guess, pushing their way into something. It's people that are credentialed in the sense of have masters in this, I guess, kind of, or you know what I mean? Have or at least have bachelor's degrees in business that push their way into this. But it's still, I mean, it's just such an insular community that the richest, the richest 1% of people are the only people kind of allowed into this community at all, let alone, you know what I mean? Into the upper echelons of it. And for upper middle class, petty bourgeois, once again, people to push their way into it, wannabe Wall Street stockbrokers, I guess, to push their way into it is seen as a populist victory.
Well, it's interesting because, of course, Wall Street for the majority of its history was more of a working class industry. I think this is really expressed well in Michael Lewis's Liar's Poker. Have you guys ever read that book? But he really emphasizes, it's really interesting. It's a pretty good anthropology of the 80s. He served I believe as a trader at Salomon Brothers, which no longer exists, went down in flames for some reason. But he really emphasizes that the people there were outer borough, he emphasized that they were very fat and took pride in it. They would eat a lot as sort of a challenge thing. But what happens, of course, over the course of the 80s and the 90s is that sort of a class of Wall Street people gets replaced with actually the type of numbers people that Michael Lewis later fetishizes in books like Moneyball, where you are essentially a lot of people were physicists, or they were astronomers or whatever, and they left the academy to essentially use mathematical models on Wall Street. So you have the professionalization of an industry of banking that wasn't necessarily as professional as it was beforehand. And so you could just look at it, the difference between like the junk bonds crisis of the late 80s, which is much more of sort of like basically a pump and dump scheme. And to sort of what happened in 2008, 2009, which was basically the problems with like hyper manipulation of financialized instruments. And it's a different quality of scam. And so I think what's interesting about the Wolf of Wall Street in particular is that it's in this transitional moment of the 90s where people like Belfort are still sort of scrapping their way to the top as, you know, the Lloyd Blankfeins, Harvard BA, you know, Lloyd Blankfeins, Jamie Dimons are really rising to the top of the finance profession. And that's really the last time some sort of outer borough scam artist, someone like a Trumpian figure, and Belfort's very much a Trumpian figure and presages Trump in a lot of different ways. Belfort's from Bayside, Queens, you know, Trump's from Queens, blah, 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 was able to make it like that. You know, a Trump wouldn't be possible today. You know, we're not going to have Trumps of our generation because they're way too professionalized. And I think that's an important thing that the movie does.
Right. You want me to clip that?
Relevant about the movie to be watching right now is that, as Daniel was just saying, I mean, the Wall Street has become far more mechanized, sort of algorithmized. And the movie is this portrait of like when there were still the animal spirits, like, you know, coursing. I mean, not that they're not still there now, I'm sure, but like they were coursing through Wall Street in a much more palpable way. And the GameStop thing is a kind of like return to that, right? Like this is not the rational, like the models were not, they didn't predict this. This isn't what was supposed to happen. The math PhDs couldn't have predicted this. And that's, people are taking joy in that, obviously, and just the, like, you know, the triumph of the irrational on the market. Yeah, right. Like, and I think that I think that there's like an understandable and, you know, whatever, correct, you know, schadenfreude, you know, about people and, you know, giant hedge funds and stuff, you know, like getting screwed over and complaining and calling the referee because, you know, what they normally do unto others has been done unto them. But it's also, you know, to Forrest's point, you know, it's not being done by, you know, a bunch of people with minimum wage jobs, right? You know, it's done by people with MBAs who are just kind of at the bottom of the ladder, relatively speaking.
And you could actually say that about a lot of our politics, right? I mean, I think it's fair to say that the left wing is mainly composed of downwardly mobile middle class people at the moment, right? So this is a phenomenon that I mean, I think that's just more of an empirical fact than a judgment. I don't want to get into the PMC thing. I mean, I think it's, you know, we need the labor base personally. Without that, it's not going to be great. But I think that we're seeing a lot of these things happen in different social sectors, whereas like essentially the declining bourgeoisie is getting angry and getting revenge where it can, whether it's by supporting
for sure, right? Like I think that that's absolutely true about the left too. You know, that they that it does by and large come from the downwardly mobile or downwardly weirdly mobile, you know, sons and daughters of the PMC right now. But at least it's in at least that's in a direction that identifies with or sort of gropes towards some kind of working class politics. Whereas actually this is a perfect segue because I wanted to ask you about this. Somebody, Matt Binder, posted this on Twitter, apparently on the Robinhood website. They have there's a thing. Actually, I just want to show this. It has it's no longer there, but there's the archived thing. It says so. First of all, I like on the top says democratized finance for all. That sounds good.
Sounds like a Jacobin article.
It does, right? I mean, both in content and in headline format. But then. It's got this thing called "What is Socialism? Understanding Socialism," and it says under socialism means the production are owned collectively rather than by individuals. Okay, historical examples of socialist countries include Nazi Germany.
Checks out.
So I mean, it's a little. I mean, it's probably a little redundant, but I mean, we've got a historian with us right now.
Daniel, is this true?
Nazi Germany, socialist utopia, or nah.
No, Nazi Germany was not a socialist utopia.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, just put that on the record for future generations.
In fact, not, I mean, there was a big state sector, there was a war economy, but, the means of production were by and large, in fact, owned by private individuals.
Capitalists did pretty well under the Nazis.
Yeah, that's right. You had like some who obviously for reasons that don't need to be spelled out didn't, but ones who did very well. But in any case, that established, getting back to the Wolf of Wall Street, we start out, and actually, as I was thinking about what you just said, I was thinking they really should have ended the movie. I guess if Scorsese hadn't already done the thing at the end of Casino where he talks about how it's casinos aren't run by cool mob guys anymore. It's just like it's just these bland corporations. That I guess he could have done something similar with Wall Street. At the end of this one.
Well, there is there's always like kind of a romancing of pre-computerized business run. You know what I mean? Things in Scorsese movies. And I mean, I don't know. In some ways, what Daniel was saying about it being kind of an inroad for the middle class, like there definitely, like when it started, like there definitely isn't that anymore. And it does feel like Wolf of Wall Street, on some level, is the story of kind of a last gasp of that middle class. That the middle class breaking into that very insular world. So in that sense, I think that you probably could. I mean, I don't know. Scorsese probably would find a very Casino-esque end for it. But I mean, I think also with these guys, just one last point about the GameStop thing. With these guys, like they probably are using it in some sense as an audition for, for Wall Street. Like they probably do see it as a very Wolf of Wall Street breaking in maybe to some of these markets for them. Because, I mean, it does seem in some senses like, all right, like we're the guys that, if you turn that into your branding, like we're the guys that kind of cheated Wall Street, we're the guys that destroyed this hedge fund, like that does seem like it would be kind of an inroad for certain people to get into, into that world.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So at the beginning of the movie, in fact, actually, this is also interesting because it's the same format, much more so than Casino or Raging Bull. It's the same format as Goodfellas, where we start out by seeing the protagonist on the top of the world. My whole life I always wanted to be whatever it is. But in this case, obviously much more so in terms of the lifestyle, and also it just seems like the movie is just luxuriating way more in, oh my God, look at what a piece of shit this guy is, in a way that's both like, it's contemptible and it's supposed to be contemptible, but it's also like a lot of fun to watch, and it's supposed to be fun to watch and sort of half identify with.
We should have thought ahead to make like Scorsese bingo. You know what I mean? Like every one of these movies, like
I wanted. It does seem like, listen, it's an awesome movie, entertaining. He's absolutely repeating himself. The exact same themes, totally. Like literally the exact same themes. And that's why
counting on people like us not watching like Goodfellas one week and this movie the next, because there's a big spread between them.
It's in some ways the exact same movie. I mean, in a lot of ways. So he's very attracted to these themes. That's pretty clear.
I'll give him props for this. It could have been a lot even more similar than these other movies, because in the book, Jordan Belfort has this whole thing where he talks about how mob bosses would bring young stockbrokers or like young associates into Stratton Oakmont, and they would learn how to manipulate the market from Jordan for a year, and then they would go on to start like these mob based like stockbroker firms. So I give Scorsese props for not including that fact, because he could have like linked those two things together and made it a lot more similar to every other movie we've watched.
And that's actually a Sopranos plot, of course, where Chrissy does the fucking dumb scheme with the internet company, I believe, in one of the first or second season.
Yeah, that's right. Push Mystics.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about this. I'm not sure. I mean, on one level, yeah, it really is reveling in what a contemptible character Belfort is, but it also spends more time, like more of it than Goodfellas is also like reveling in the upsides of this lifestyle. Like, there's so many just like detailed, gratuitous, graphic scenes. All the sex, all the prostitutes, all that stuff, and how much fun he's having. Like, it really is reveling in that in a way that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of gross. I mean, it's extremely entertaining, but it's also just like gross. Yeah.
Legally, he's kind of like reveling in this weird middle ground, because when it's somebody in the mob that, that loves the violence of it, that loves the chaos of it, we can very clearly decide within seconds this person is a bad person.
Right.
When it's somebody who's, on Wall Street, which is a more I guess, seen in a lot of people's minds as a more legitimate career, like there's all these murky gray sides to it that it's like, well, some of the stuff he's doing is illegal, but most of it's illegal. Like, yeah, he's doing a lot of drugs, but like at the same time, like the stockbroker part, like, everybody's doing it on Wall Street. So it's in this very murkier area.
Yeah.
Well, they do go out of their way early in the movie, and I mean, I certainly agree with Ryan. I mean, that they're trying very, like, it's a lot of, it's both, and you can't separate them, right? It's like it's showing what a piece of shit he is, but also like really lingering on how much fun it would be to be this particular kind of piece of shit. But they are, like the Forrest point, I mean, they do early in the movie, right? So one of the best things, you kind of see him at his height, crashing the helicopter into the lawn and stumbling into the pool and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you go back to his origin story, as like his first job on like a real Wall Street firm at the beginning. And you have Matthew McConaughey, who's on screen for like 5 minutes, but I mean, it's like the best part of the movie. It's always awesome to watch.
Do we know what happened to him? There's not any explanation, was there?
No. He just wrote a book. Oh, the character or Matthew McConaughey?
The character. Oh. I expected him to come back in the end or something.
Yeah, that was one of my surprises with this movie, because I remember from the marketing, I thought Matthew McConaughey was going to be a big part of the movie, and he's basically there for the one scene, and then he's gone.
But in the one scene that he's there for, part of what he's there for is to establish that, like even though he's doing a lot, obviously he's doing a lot more illegal things, and he's much more at the margins of respectability with it, that basically the ethos of Stratton Oakford is like some established, completely legal Wall Street guy like Matthew McConaughey, that it's all, legal as far as you can tell. If there's anything illegal going on at this point in the movie, you don't see it.
Yeah. Hey, you guys want to guess what happened to Mark Hanna, the Matthew McConaughey character?
But he does go on and on about how, like, they're even if it's legal, they're ripping people off, that they have no idea whether anybody's going to make money off this. And in fact, what you really hope for is that they don't, because they just get addicted to it and they keep making trades and never cash out.
Yeah, it's just a casino. It's the exact same business model as a casino. Just get them winning just enough so they get addicted and keep playing. And that's it.
They're seen as the same as like degenerate gamblers in casino or whatever other like movie, like mob movies, I guess, which is the connection again, I guess, with like, they're like, oh, well, this person fucking deserves it because they're a degenerate gambler. Sorry for cutting you off, Ben. I don't know. I just found it hilarious that I just found this, and I just like instantly was like, oh my God, I need to share the screen. Hold on. Of course, this is what happened to this guy. Just like Jordan Belfort, he's now
of course
secret guy.
Yep.
It would be irresponsible not to become. In that scene, the politically the best part of the scene is where they're talking
Holy
about.
Shit. He has a quote from Jordan Belfort.
Oh, that's too perfect. Oh, that's too perfect.
He was of charm. He was of charisma, smooth as silk. He was simply the best salesman any of us have ever seen. A quote from the Wolf of Wall Street book, I think that. Sorry,
where's the Leo quote? We need a Leo quote.
Yeah.
the best part politically of that scene is when I forget what he exactly says, but the spirit of the thing is he's like, well, and we make money and we make money for the other people and everybody wins, right? And Matthew McConaughey's character is like, no, we're like, he doesn't say this, but this is a quote from Goldman Sachs, I think. But it's the spirit of like, no, we're gonna rip their fucking eyeballs out. Like that's what we're doing here. Like this is not some kind of mutual, there's no myth of the free market, the rising tide lifts all boats. He's like, no, we're gonna fuck them so they don't fuck us. We're gonna win, they're gonna lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's also really interesting about that to me is the use of militaristic language, which permeates all of these these professions that had previously been basically seen as feminized. Like if you look at the 19th and early 20th century, banking, law, these are feminine professions. You're not like working in the fields, you're not working with machines. So it's just very interesting if we're looking at the level of discourse. How over the course of the second half of the 20th century, as capitalism became and the sort of Fisherian capitalist realism world, capitalists adopted the language of the military when none of them themselves served in the military, or have any relationship to the structures of violence. So you have this sort of sublimated imperialism, at least in my opinion, this sort of sublimated imperialism reflecting itself in this like traditionally feminized profession through this language of like ripping your eyeballs out or like fucking people, and things along those lines, which is like hyper violent language in a profession where you're just like literally sitting at a desk looking at numbers.
Well,
that's what's always. Sorry, Forrest.
Well, I mean, just jumping off your point, like he says, like we don't make anything, we don't produce anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's literally a transactional monetary thing. They're just extracting value from transactions that are already existing.
They're totally alienated from their labor, total rentier class. And so to give their lives meaning, to give meaningless lives meaning, they adopted the language of basically a martial language, to pretend like they're fighting battles, to pretend like they're, connected to this romantic capital R early 19th century tradition, right? And it's so funny to me, and it's still today, you still see these bankers using this militaristic language, and it's absolutely ridiculous and should be mocked at all possible moments.
Yeah, for sure. I remember actually, I think Corey Robin talks about this in Reactionary Mind. The way that like some versions of conservatism kind of take that like sort of traditional language of like martial virtues and transfer that into the marketplace as like as an alternative or supplementary site of doing battle.
Well, he has that quote from William F. Buckley, where William F. Buckley's like, capitalism is boring. Like, he wants to blow some shit up. He wants to conquer some shit. Like, it's just doing transactions all day. I mean, that bores the shit out of him. He needs a little more to get the blood flowing.
And I have to bring in my favorite thinker, Francis Fukuyama, because one of the things that he said at the end of history, at the end of that essay, he's like, the age of the end of history, the last man is going to be incredibly boring, right? We're going to have no romanticism. Because it's going to be about economics and exchange and blah, blah, blah. And this is like fundamentally aromantic. And so, again, it's interesting. It's like you need to give this meaning, this ultimately meaningless meaning, particularly in this moment of the 1990s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that also comes out in the bit you parodied at the beginning of the episode when they talk about how many times a day do you masturbate, and McConaughey's whole thing, like you're spending all your whole day just sitting there dealing with numbers. You've got to to keep from cracking. You've got to make sure you're masturbating at least twice a day. You've got to be doing something manly with your time.
Yeah, although that gets merged in too, because he says before you know it, you'll be thinking about money while you get off.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I mean, it's not just about it being boring. I mean, the masturbating part. I think it's also about the stress.
Yeah,
the stress of kind of dealing with these abstract concepts.
Yeah,
that you're pushing yourself to the limit, and obviously they're filling themselves with drugs too, like uppers, like constantly, and like so there's this breaking point of like of all of the stuff in this is an abstraction. Plus, they're kind of aesthetically living in a certain way. And they're gonna, it's an implosion point if you don't, masturbate at least a couple times a day.
By the way, I don't know if I told you this, Daniel, but one of the strangest things that I think happened to me, and I think one of the strangest things I've ever seen, on Twitter that involved me was after the Slavoj Žižek Jordan Peterson debate. I wrote an article about it, and I sent. And it was a very like understated, like it wasn't, it was basically just like, oh wow, like Jordan Peterson really doesn't know what he's talking about. Like he really got, Marx really, really wrong in this debate article. And it was like approvingly tweeted out by Francis Fukuyama. He was like, no, this guy's right. Peterson really doesn't know his Marx. It's like this.
Fukuyama knows Marx better than 99.9% of socialists. He read everything Marx wrote. He's basically Marx, very, very similar to Marx, but the other side of the coin. He's an original Hegelian. If you actually read Fukuyama, that guy really knows Marx.
Fair enough. All right. So he's at the whatever the firm is with Matthew McConaughey, and then the first, you kind of see him go from being very, very innocent and kind of repeating this like Reaganite propaganda about how this is all mutually beneficial and rising tide lifts all boats, and McConaughey being like a capitalist Nietzschean about it and telling him to stop believing that nonsense, and you got to masturbate more and snort more coke, and and then you'll really be able to fuck these guys, the clients. And then he's clearly sort of indicated that he's imbibed all that, right? He's on board. You see him after the scene at lunch with McConaughey, where he won't even have drink a martini with McConaughey. You see him at the strip club, and that you get the idea that he's living the McConaughey life.
Well, there's a very specific use for the coke, is that it makes their fingers dial faster. I mean, I don't like it's kind of obviously it's an excuse to just do more coke, but like there is like the human body, like testing it as far as it will go for basically, a purposeless existence. You know what I mean? Like they're bringing themselves as far as they could possibly go for an abstract existence.
Yeah. I remember in 2009, there was actually a scientific study showing that the feeling of that the like same parts of your brain were simulated by making lots of money and snorting coke. So that's just an interesting thing for this movie. But so he gets Belfort gets his license. He's going to spend on his very first day as an actual stockbroker. Black Monday happens. There's the biggest stock market crash since 1929. He loses his job, and then he ends up almost having to get a job doing something, where they might be, if not producing something, at least directly selling something. But crisis averted. He doesn't have to do that. He gets a new job at the investment center, which is like a strip mall kind of bottom of the barrel brokerage, where they don't even have computers. They sell penny stocks from pink sheets. But having learned what McConaughey imparted at the beginning of the movie, he's like amazing at doing that, because he can very charismatically talk to people on the phone and get them to spend at least thousands of dollars on these worthless penny stocks. And then his wife has the one of the only moments in the movie where anybody shows any kind of ethical qualms about anything, and says, "Hey, wouldn't you feel better if you were at least like stealing from rich people who could afford to give it up?" It was like, okay. So when he makes this decision, then he starts. Well, they've already started. He and Jonah Hill. And by the way, Jonah Hill's character in this movie is amazing. We should really talk about him. But they start their own company, but it's at this point when he realizes that he'd feel better about himself if he was at least screwing over rich people, that they decide that they call it Stratton Oakmont, to give people the impression that this is a very old and respectable firm.
It's interesting. They never quite like. It's not like there's anything behind that besides the fact that it's a fancy sounding name. You know what I mean? Like they never really go into where he came up with that name. He's something like Stratton Oakmont, and everyone's like,
it sounds good. You got a nice lion logo. It seems legit.
Yeah, I think he just kept. I mean, certainly the credit to give it the movie is he just sort of brainstormed some words that sounded really old money.
Mm-hmm. It worked.
Yeah.
He did it well. He executed it well.
And then the lion is Freudian subtext that he's being deceitful to his customer base, aka he's lying. Yeah.
Well, now I'm confused because I thought he was a wolf.
Lions, tigers, and bears and wolves.
Yeah. Jew on this feed, Ben, you're half Jewish. What did you think of this? What did you think of the portrayal of Jews? This is like one of the 2 Scorsese movies that centers Jews. There's Casino with Ace Ross, and then there's this one. Both dealing with money industries. Interesting, but like it's. I think it's the only movie where almost all the major characters are Jewish, which is interesting for Scorsese.
Yeah, that's interesting because I wasn't like. In some cases I wasn't clear on it, but that it did seem like these guys were overwhelmingly Jewish. I think that was like that seemed to like symbolically in the movie. I mean, whatever. I mean, maybe they all were, but like at least symbolically in the movie, I think that just seemed to be like a quick shorthand for not actually coming from from like the old money they were pretending to. But really being like, lower middle class drivers, who are like busted in to the 1%. I mean, I guess this takes us back. And actually also, common thing for Scorsese movies now is, Jews marrying Italians. It was the other way around in Goodfellas, but yeah, I mean, I guess if somebody were to find elements of this, as the kids say, problematic, I think that would probably focus on the Jonah Hill character.
Yeah, like super stereotypical.
Yeah,
like extraordinarily so. I wish I could talk to Jonah Hill and sort of ask him like what his take is on the role, but him and Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner is like basically playing an older, whiny Jewish man, like 100%. And so it was interesting.
Well, to be fair, in his case, an older, angry Jewish man.
Yes, angry. It's hard to tell sometimes.
Well, if you read the book version of it, kind of with Jordan Belford's monologue about his partner, like the character that Jonah Hill is kind of based on, he has a different name in real life, but. He's Jewish, but he's obsessed with looking like a wasp.
Well, they mentioned that a little bit in the movie. He wears these like horn rim glasses he doesn't need, and like sweater, like he just came back from the country club.
Yeah, it looks ridiculous because he looks like Jonah Hill. Right. Yeah, so it's like that's played for comedy. Like Jonah Hill is never fitting in at a wasp at the Harvard Club.
But in the book that's what they imply too. That what I mean. Like it's So I don't know. I think that I don't recommend you read the book. I couldn't make it through very much of it, but he has this obsession with his Jewish heritage throughout the entire thing, way more than in the movie. Like he's constantly like every time he introduces someone, he's like, oh, he's an old-fashioned Jew. You know what I mean? He's one of those new Jews. Like he has this obsession with his own heritage that that throughout the book, and he mentions it constantly. And it is probably some kind of it's coded outsider status because the WASPs are the people that are most seen on Wall Street. Like it's a very insular ethnic community, I guess is what you call it. So. But throughout, he has like this obsession with it.
I didn't know.
Literally, I'm from that area. People are obsessed with like ethnic white identity.
I guess it was interesting because I think the movie, at least taking that on its own, was a really interesting combination of, if you're looking for it, it's like super there, but it's also almost never, maybe literally never explicitly referred to at any point in the movie.
Well, what's his name? Shane from The Walking Dead. I forget his name. He has a Jewish star, I believe. Right. So I think that he's like slightly lower in class than them. He's like upper working and they're lower middle. And so he's like more connected to the ethnic identity. But it's interesting because I think that generation, I think like I was the last generation of sort of like ethnic New York Jews like that. I think that's becoming increasingly a thing of the past, which is kind of an interesting sociological phenomenon.
I didn't even realize that Jordan was supposed to be Jewish in the movie. I mean, maybe I wasn't paying very close attention.
I didn't realize it until we saw his dad.
Right. Who's like closer to the like immigrant grandparents, you know? Jordan's like the third. The joke is the grandfather's a merchant. The father, owns a business, and the son's an art historian. You know, so in this one you can make that financial plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the was it Stephen Jay Gould has this book called Rocks of Ages, where he says that in the neighborhood where he grew up, everybody was either Jewish or Catholic. He had one Protestant friend, and the time he was over at that friend's house, he met their grandfather. He didn't believe that this person was a grandfather because part of his, he thought it was like definitional that grandparents always had to speak with an accent.
I mean, there's the I guess the trilateral Italian, Jewish, Irish I don't like connection.
That was so way better than I thought it was going to be because we were talking about Jews. You said
I know. I was trying to think triangular, I guess. No, but there's I still have Reaganland on my brain still. But you know what I mean? Like there's the Jewish, Italian, Irish connection where all of those ethnic groups were obviously intricately connected, and obviously that the Irish immigrants that were here longer were merciless to both Jewish and Italian immigrants at times when they were allowed into the power structure way before either of them were. But
and vice versa. I mean, like you have I'm sure at some point we'll watch the talk about The Departed, and The Departed is about Irish gangsters, and one of the more memorable lines in the movie is Jack Nicholson saying, "Don't cry over spilled guineas."
Yeah.
Probably one of his worst movies, I think, The Departed, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
And we should do The Departed. That should be the next one. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, that would. I haven't watched that in quite a while.
I watched it for the first time 3 weeks ago, and DiCaprio.
All right, so that's got to be the. That's got to be the next one.
I mean, I think. I mean, my quick take on The Departed is that there are some amazing performances in it. There are tons of good lines in it.
Yeah.
There's some really good scenes. The plot doesn't bear thinking too hard about.
Yeah. It doesn't add up. There's like an uneasiness in the movie because it doesn't really make sense. But yeah, we'll talk about that with The Departed.
It's a lot like Heat. I feel like it's like a similar there's all those plot twists that you're like, all right, they don't add to the plot, but cool.
Yeah, fair enough. So I want to get through the plot. I don't want to keep anybody too long here. So over the course, I mean, we could just condense a lot. Over the course of many scenes of the atmosphere in Stratton Oakmont, which I think one of the first things you see is him paying a female employee $10,000 to have her head shaved in front of everybody and
scalp her.
Yeah, and that's one of the mildest at an office party. The thing. I mean, the scene where they're talking about doing the dwarf tossing and if nothing else is the. I mean, it's all very bound up in that stereotypical portrayal that Daniel's talking about, whatever. But I have to say that, along with the scene where he's explaining his marriage to his cousin, are probably the two Jonah Hill things.
Oh God, yeah. God, both of those are just amazing. I mean, my favorite part about the dwarf discussion is all these conjectures about dwarf culture and how they gossip and
they talk to each other.
Yeah, they talk to each other.
Where's gonna get around?
Where are you getting where are you getting this?
Would Jordan it's like this is why
this is why I love you. You think of things like this.
Well, there's the mix during that. There's a mix of them. They're treating these dwarves like they're animals, but at the same time, you can't get away from the fact that they're very human. So it's they talk to each other, you know what I mean? It's in this weird middle ground of
Yeah, it is. It's they're gossipy, but also they're lawn darts. It's
so you see a lot of that over the course of the movie. A lot of it's just spent seeing the orgies and seeing the drugs, which again also definitely some of the most memorable. This is the first time I saw the movie since it was in the theater, and the stuff about the the Quaalude stuff was I think probably what stuck in my mind most, from 2013, when I saw it. Actually, did I see that with you, Ryan, originally?
It's possible. I don't remember. Okay. It seems like something we would have watched together, but
I don't remember. But anyway,
there's got to be some class analysis on the whole the smoke crack with me scene.
Yeah,
that's true.
Throughout the whole movie,
again.
That's right.
That's true. You never see them smoke crack again. Like
it's a one-off.
Tons of powder coke, of course. Lots of Quaaludes. That's the which
the lemons. I mean,
for me, the most memorable scene in the movie is when he's at the country club and trying to get in the car when the Quaaludes get in. It's just
God,
and it's just like so long. The scene is so long.
That scene was
such a good actor. Leonardo DiCaprio is so good.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Like this movie is basically perfectly acted, and Margot Robbie is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
she was like 21 or something when she did this. I mean, the acting is really incredible. These movies.
The scene that also pops up for me is when they're in the bedroom together and she's throwing the water in his face, and they're both just like at full 100 in those scenes. He's like on the bed and he's like doing like this, and it was amazing.
In some ways, I mean, Leo's kind of an actor from a different time. Like the fact that he's willing to make that quote about Jordan Belfort, or you know what I mean, like. There's kind of like a gimmicky side to his acting that you don't really see like A-list celebrities have necessarily now. So it kind of feels like I guess in like the 80s and 90s when your star could just be kind of snatched from you, like so star like you know what I mean. So A-list actors kind of had to do all this like gimmicky side stuff. Like I mean, you kind of see it with a lot of Sopranos actors. Like they write like these weird books on the side and like the guide to blah blah blah. Like Leonardo DiCaprio kind of, for an A-list celebrity, has quite a bit of that like weird side merchandising and like.
Well, his dad was like a con artist, I think. I'm not a con artist. That might be too far, but he comes from a hippie, but like a legit hippie background, not like his dad like didn't work that much type of background, if I recall correctly. So I bet you he was in Hollywood as a young kid. That's a dark place to be as a child. I'm sure he himself witnessed a lot of things like that. And one thing that I wanted to bring up that is really throughout this movie. Remember the scene where Jordan yells at Coach Taylor on the ship about sort of like you're a middle class like idiot. That's really interesting because I was watching some like wrestling from around that time in the 90s and early 2000s. My girlfriend, for her podcast, Low Culture Boil, subscribe, but they did something on the Attitude Era from wrestling. And one of like the main things that Bales would do is basically critique the audience for being middle-class idiots. And that reminded me a lot of like Trump, like that's sort of like, I'm the one who like reveals it all and I'm going to see through this. And if you don't, you're like bourgeois morons. And I think that's like a very strong sort of cultural element.
It's already kind of been referred to, but I mean, I think the Trump thing is like, a really, really strong echo here. The kind of combination of posturing as the little guy while being, incredibly rich, and also while being openly indifferent to the fate of anybody who's not him, and also that exact thing you're talking about, Daniel. That like sort of offering people a chance to look through the veil, like one of which is a really strong thing. Like one of the, I remember the very first Republican debate that Trump was in, like there was this really striking moment when he was like, hey, everybody on this stage is super corrupt. And I know that because they've all done favors for me because I've given them money.
Well, he also has said, that I'm the only one that can see through the tax code because I've cheated the tax code every conceivable way. At one point.
Yeah, I mean it's right. I mean it's the same premise as Jordan Belfort going on CNN, to talk about
it's exactly the same. Yeah.
And that's because everyone knows, I mean, like the system is rigged, right? This is not like a revelation to literally anyone. So I think the appeal of someone like Trump or Belfort is that they're like, yeah, it's rigged and here's how it's rigged.
Mm-hmm.
And you would do the same if you knew how to manipulate it. And I'm just smart for knowing how to manipulate it, like you dummies. It's an interesting.
There's also I think there's a lack of class analysis in our society. Like there's a lack of a class-based analysis to the framing. So a lot of things get put, I feel like, in terms of like what should be a class analysis gets framed in terms of in groups and like these power structures. So like something like Wall Street that, you know, as a regular person, you're not allowed into at all. Like, you know, there's no class analysis of like Jordan Belfort is starting off upper middle class and then kind of, because his parents are like accountants, like upper middle class and then becoming this rich person, but he still feels like he's a populist because he's coming into an insular in-group, like from the outside. And because we don't have a class analysis to be like, you know what, this person is not your class ally, like this person is not in the same group as you. He's like, well, I represent the people because I'm a force breaking into this more insular power structure.
It's the class politics of fools. I mean, it's like it's what we get when we don't have real class politics, a real labor movement, real stronger and relevant socialist movement. We get this is how the class antagonisms of the society get expressed and interpreted by people.
Totally. I mean, yeah, and exactly even before you said that about class analysis of fools, I was thinking, yeah, this goes back to, you know, to the thing about anti-Semitism, you know, because it's the same idea, right? You know, because you don't have an analysis of people of actual class relations, you know, classes in terms of relationships, the means of production, exchange, etc. You have an analysis about like clubs, you know, who's in like the group, you know, the in group with it, you know, which then leads to stuff like people going past the correct point that it's hilarious to see the hypocrisy of Wall Street guys getting upset about GameStop, etc., and going past that to thinking that this is like some sort of victory for the people, you know, that this, like, you know, some outsidery investors, you know, are making some money on Wall Street. Which by the way, I have to say, I do want to just play this thing for a minute because we talked about Goodfellas so much on this, and because we've talked about GameStop so much on this. Mike Racine, who's one of the three people, along with Nando Vila and Wozny Lambre, who comes on for those Sopranos recap bonus episodes every month. This last week, he did the cold open on Chapo Trap House, which I really
I'll never forget his dumb Dave Rubin bits with Michael, where he does the South Park Dave Rubin voice.
Yeah.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a shit poster.
I think we lost the audio, Ben.
I lost Ben's audio too. Oh no.
Ben, send hand signals.
I couldn't believe wanted to be a part of it. Guys on Reddit were freaking hilarious. Wanted to be a part of it. Guys on Reddit were freaking hilarious. They said what they wanted. I couldn't believe it, but some of these guys are even more autistic than I was. I didn't have many friends at school, so my mother was happy that I found something to do that wasn't just sitting in the basement making lists of people that I wanted to kill. Being online was like being a part of a crew of dudes who rocked. I joined all the best subs. Cumtown, Wall Street Bets. That was it. Wall Street Bets was the best. Anyway, one day Giraffe Pussy posted about how a bunch of hedge funds all had short positions in GameStop. And wouldn't it be funny if we all bought shares just to mess with them? Well, I didn't know what any of that meant, but I knew what GameStop was. My grandma used to take me there if I was good and buy me PS3 games. So I figured, what did I have to lose? I put all my money into GameStop at $4 a share, and wouldn't you know it, the stock price rose over 1,700%. Well, when that happened, some very powerful people got upset.
Yesterday may have been a good day for retail investors, with posts on Reddit skyrocketing the price of GameStop. But many analysts are seeing this trend for what it is: a war. A war between Reddit and the civilized world. Could the toxic men of these online communities be coming to your house to kill you? More at 11.
See, people think when you're a Redditor, you're only there to do coordinated harassment and say slurs. That's really not true. I mean, that's only like half of us. But it didn't matter. And this is where things got bad. First, they shut down the sub's Discord chat for hate speech and set the group to private. The price of GameStop plummeted. The boys and I did everything we could to get the stock to rally. We shared memes, we posted, we increased our positions, but it wasn't enough. The establishment wanted to scare people, and it was working. Everyone in the sub was saying don't sell, but it just felt like the house was winning. My portfolio took a fucking nosedive. I panicked. And this was where I messed up. I figured if the big boys could short the stock, I could too. And that's what I did. I borrowed shares, and I waited for the price to drop. And right after that, Robinhood halted the buying of GameStop, and the stock dropped 70%. I tripled my money and cashed out. And then I got really stupid. I started posting about my new PS5 and IKEA bed frame. The guys in the sub knew something was up. It didn't take them long to figure out I had shorted the stock, and once they did, I got a lifetime ban from the sub. And that was it. Once they found out, they permanently kicked me off the platform. That following March, Senator Elizabeth Warren drafted a bill banning more than 4 men to be on the same thread, and President Kamala Harris signed it into law. And all I had was my bed frame, my PS5, and my $700,000, which I put into Dogecoin, which ended up being a pump and dump. And my PS5 broke when I threw it into a wall. And that's that. All I have right now is $3,200 in a checking account. $3,200 to never post again. It wasn't even enough to go to therapy. And now I'm nobody. I'm a normie. I get to live the rest of my life like a soy boy.
The Warren banned more than 4 men from posting on the same post. And fucking got me.
We're gonna be banned from doing these streams.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: you guys can't do any more of these streams.
All right. So, and then I think the big thing, like, you know, we talked about Scorsese repeating himself across movies that you see is actually like in the Racine parody of the Goodfellas plot. You know, just now, you always in, you know, not every Scorsese movie, but every Scorsese movie of this mold. You know, Casino, Goodfellas, Raging Bull. You always get the thing where everybody gets, like, where the main character gets like 20 warnings to stop doing what they're doing, and then they just don't do it, and then it destroys them.
Yeah.
So in this case, yeah, it's Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights, you know, starting to investigate him. Angry Jewish dad saying, "What's wrong with you? Don't talk to him. Why would you possibly talk to him?" And then he tries to bribe him, and then the SEC offers him a deal, which would then probably get the FBI off their backs, and then he's going to take it, and then he talks himself out of taking it while he's giving an inspirational speech to the guys, and then he you know, then he goes to jail. And he's reduced to giving motivational speeches in Australia.
The crazy thing is that the actual deal that the SEC offered him didn't really fucking bar him from anything. Like the actual deal that if he had taken it, the SEC offered him was that he could have an office, like the shortcuts in the deal. He could have an office in the same building that Stratton Oakmont was in. He could consult with them like regularly. Wow. He was allowed in the boardroom. He was allowed to invest in whatever stock. He was still allowed to invest in whatever stock they had. He could invest as much money as he wanted. He just couldn't openly be the lead, like the CEO of the company. So
that's just insane.
Yeah. So when he reneged on that deal, he's basically like he just can't be the head of the company like that, or be technically a stockbroker. So like, but
well, and I guess this is maybe where like that sort of usual Scorsese protagonist death wish, is like most obvious, because he has tens of millions of dollars in the bank account. Like he never, as Angry Jewish Dad tells him, he would never have to work again. It's like it's just at that point, it's just pure ego. He won't let himself take the deal.
He could have also sold off all of his shares in all these companies and made, like $100 million. Like he had all of these, you know what I mean? Like they weren't stopping him from doing any of that.
No.
And it's crazy to me, like finding out that like at the time, at least, the NASDAQ allowed you to invest, like even if you were a stockbroker owning one of these firms, you were allowed to invest, like you were allowed to own 5% of the company in your own name if you took a company public, which is just an insane thing to learn.
That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, right. And I mean, of course, that's the larger thing that I mean, everything that's being depicted here, a lot of it is illegal, but it's also you also the very fact that these kind of outsidery guys who were like having these like crazy Emperor Nero orgies were the ones who got caught, but like, most people who did things like this didn't get caught. And, that shows you something about the toothlessness of a lot of what regulation there is. Never, or certainly was at that time, but, is, never mind the lack of regulation. But also, I mean, I think that, I guess, I mean, this maybe is just kind of a painfully obvious socialist point, but just going back to Matthew McConaughey's original point, we don't make anything. Like, why is it that like the thing that you should really get out of this, obviously not what Leo got out of it, judging by his willingness to read that spot, but what you should really get out of this is, why on earth do we have a form of economic organization where you can have this like this weird like this weird floating casino to buy and sell bits and pieces of companies that people actually rely on for for their income, doing things that matter.
And these, whether it's a hedge fund or whether it's a stockbroker or, what I mean? Like whatever part of this it is, they're making money off a lot of times transactions. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're selling back, like either shorting things or they're like selling back to other people that have lent it. Like they're making that transactional fee. And I mean, they touch on it in Wolf of Wall Street where he's like, oh, you make money via commission. Like that's, you know what I mean? So it's financial vultures fighting over, who's allowed to be the biggest vulture, in this, throughout this.
I once said to Bhaskar Sankara, the founder of Jacobin, that with his business acumen, he could have gone and worked on Wall Street or something. Without hesitating, he was like, no. I would have been an industrialist because I want to actually like make something for the society. Like I don't want to do this stuff. I want to like put, real like steel or, cars or something like that. That's what I would have done. I'm like, all right. That's a social purpose.
That's kind of admirable. Yeah.
And there's something to do though, I feel like with like the amount of drugs that, people in this industry take in, like you're kind of numbing out a pointless existence.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
clearly, yeah.
You're procuring money for yourself while other people are doing the work and you're just siphoning off the money. Like there's no tangible purpose to any of this.
And I think that's why you get the martial language and the heavy drug use, right? It's really a meaningless endeavor. Yeah. I think Viktor Frankl, there's a lot wrong with him, but I do think human beings like work toward production and meaning. And when you're doing something so obviously meaningless, I think that eats at your soul. People are asking in the chat about my poster. It's a Bauhaus poster. Jesus, guys. Bauhaus. Anti-fascist.
All right. Fair enough. All right, look, I want to. I know people have to go, so So, final thoughts about Wolf of Wall Street.
Pretty good movie. I have to say I don't enjoy it as much as maybe it's just having done these other Scorsese movies recently, but I didn't enjoy it as much as Goodfellas or Raging Bull or Mean Streets.
Yeah. I fucking hated it.
Ersatz quality to it. There's an ersatz quality to this and The Departed.
Well, I feel I was guessing you hated it, Micah, because among other things, you praised the Eileen Jones review, and without having read it, I know a priori that she hated it.
Of course, it's Eileen.
There's a lot to hate about it. I mean, the performances are amazing. It's aesthetically amazing, but yeah, there's a lot to hate about it too.
Well, sure. I remember the exact scene when I decided I hated it, which was something like 3 or 4 minutes in, when there's just like a shot of like a sex worker's ass, like up in the air, and then you see his head, I think, come down to do blow out of her asshole. I don't know. I'm just like, okay, like it's just there's so much about this movie in particular. I'm like, this is like somebody gave 10, 20, 30 million dollars to like a 15-year-old high school boy and was like, have at it, and complete, with the drugs, the women, all of that stuff, naked women all the time. They're just sort of like set pieces, obviously, but like it wouldn't be a Scorsese movie if he there wasn't just like casual homophobia, and they never actually say the N-word, but they say the phrase the N-word. Somebody gets
that's right.
The N-word in the people are being called retards. It's just like this. Come on, what am I watching here? But I am glad that you made me watch it. I'm glad to have witnessed that this thing exists. I will not be watching it again, but I appreciate you dragging me into it.
We should get Jonah Hill on the pod. Ben.
Yeah. Good idea.
I loved it. Great. I don't know if you guys ever watched mid-90s. That was a great movie.
Yeah, of course.
Interviews about it. He's a very thoughtful guy. Seems like a really, really cool guy.
No, we should for sure do that. Should have Jonah Hill on, and Micah should watch the movie to prepare to talk to him.
Do you want to know something really interesting? The actual, and I forgot about this until we were going to do this stream. The movie Wolf of Wall Street is linked to a bunch of embezzlement and fraud cases, the making of the movie, because the production company was involved in that one MDB like Malaysian state scandal that happened a few years ago, where they embezzled like a shitload of money, and there's like money laundering charges that they did through they laundered money through the through the movie production itself. So like the movie is like a I don't know, like the movie was bathed in fraud.
It's just turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Final thoughts, Daniel?
I think I was just saying it's very ersatz. Scorsese was an old guy when he makes this. And so that's why I actually think The Irishman is the best movie he's made in a long, long time, because it reflects on old age and dying. And so it'd be interesting to do that one, because I think he's really playing the hits here. And especially watching it so soon after Goodfellas, it is so similar to Goodfellas.
Yeah, and it is interesting because The Irishman is, I think, superficially closer to the atmosphere of Goodfellas. Like it's
totally
really
different, though.
To like evoke that. But the actual movie is way more different than Goodfellas or any of the others.
Yeah, and I think brilliant. I think The Irishman was brilliant. One of the few films that like actually sits and reflects on death in like a real way. And we should do that one at some point too.
Yeah, we can get Dustin Goodfellas to do it with us. I'm down.
We also have a request in the chat to do Beetlejuice at some point. Just worth mentioning.
That'd be great.
I love to. Yeah,
it's really interesting. I feel like that. Goodfellas is much closer. I feel like Goodfellas is much closer to the actual like means of production. Like the characters are actually like bringing things to places. Like, you know what I mean? Like they might be like selling drugs, but they're like on the ground selling.
Goods arrive.
Yeah, like this like Wolf of Wall Street kind of everything is financialized. Everything is transactional. Like. Like most of it, he's sitting in a boardroom. Like there might be crimes being committed, but like it's not like he's actually getting involved in these things. You feel like with with his hands. You know what I mean? Like even the one moment where there is violence. When I think Chester or whatever punches the gay guy that threw the party in his house. Like Jonah Hill throws up outside. Like they're not used to this level of physicality. like everything to them is you know, isn't linked to the earth. I feel like almost like.
That's a great observation, given what we've been saying about the martial rhetoric that is so prevalent throughout the whole thing. That when there's actual violence that shows up, Jonah literally pukes.
That's
exactly. They're super alienated in the Marxian sense.
I'll be really. I'm like a different kind of alienation. I'm really curious when we finally watch Taxi Driver to hear thoughts on that and alienation. I mean, a very different kind of alienation, because this is kind of the alienation of the most upper part of the upper class being alienated from, you know, from anything tangible. Of course, that movie is about being alienated from, you know, like society itself. So I'm really curious to hear those thoughts when we finally do watch that.
Nice. Speaking of upcoming things, so let's see. Micah, did you talk to Megan?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you about that later.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll the next week TBA for Daniel. You want to come back and do? You said you wanted to do Departed next.
Yeah, I think Departed.
Okay, you want to do that in what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, 3 weeks. We'll figure it out.
We'll do that in 2 or 3 weeks. Next week to be announced. There will be something. We'll see what it is. Meanwhile, my conversation with Doug Lane about free speech and tech censorship drops for patrons tomorrow. The Sunday night debate breakdown series continues with Terry Eagleton versus Roger Scruton on Sunday, and on Monday for the regular episode, we'll be talking to Jason Miles from This Is Revolution and debating Adam Kokesh. I hope I'm saying that guy's name right. So all good stuff coming up. I really appreciate everybody coming to watch. Really appreciate all you guys for coming to do this.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's great.
Yeah. So.
All right, guys. See you in a couple weeks. Bye.
See you in a couple weeks, Daniel.